Hey, Grace Point Church. I wonder, when was the first time you discovered the power of prayer? I wish we could have a service where the whole service is just everyone answering that question. Like, just going down the line and everyone answering when they first discovered the power of prayer, the importance of prayer, the urgency of prayer. It'd be fun because we really all have our own story. Everyone is going to answer that a little bit differently. For me, I think the first time I saw it was when I was 5 years old. It was one of my first memories of my life was when I was giving my life to Jesus. One of my first memories of childhood is when I was praying, and what happened during that encounter when I told Jesus that I wanted to follow him, and when all of a sudden the affirmation of God, I received it, I felt it, and I've known it ever since. If you're like me, there's moments in life where you know it and you believe in the power of prayer and you're experiencing it and feeling it, and there's other times where you kind of forget about it. Prayer goes on the back burner, kind of gets shoved off a little bit to the side, and then something happens and then it's brought up again. So it kind of waxes and wanes for me throughout the last, I guess I've been knowing about the power of prayer for 33 years of my life. So there's been moments where I really am into it and I know it, and then there's other moments where like I'm not. And so I wanted to share this story of one pastor who I've really appreciated. He's now gone to be with the Lord. His name is Tim Keller. He wrote a book on prayer. It's called Prayer, Experiencing Awe and Intimacy with God. I've been thinking a lot about prayer. We've been talking about prayer a lot just because Nehemiah, he prays all the time, and it continues to strike me. And everyone talks about how he's like such a good leader, and I don't know that people are always noticing all the times that he's praying constantly. And so I've been thinking about that. It's been convicting me, and I noticed with Tim Keller in his very first chapter on the book of prayer. It's called The Necessity of Prayer, and then he says it's got this little subtitle called We're Not Going to Make It. Tim Keller, who was one of the things I love about Tim Keller is he seemed to really end well. He loved Jesus all the way to the end. And he starts the book this way. He says, in the second half of my adult life, I discovered prayer. I had to. Oh, that's amazing. Here's a guy who's been pastoring and being in Christian ministry all of his life. And he says in the second, not until the second half of his life, of his adult life, did he discover prayer. This is his story. He says, in the fall of 1999, I taught a Bible study course on the Psalms. He said, it became clear to me that I was barely scratching the surface of what the Bible commanded and promised regarding prayer. Then came the dark weeks in New York after 9/11, when our whole city sank into a kind of corporate clinical depression, even as it rallied. For my family, the shadow was intensified as my wife, Kathy, struggled with the effects of Crohn's disease. Finally, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. At one point during all this, my wife urged me to do something with her we had never been able to muster the self-discipline to do regularly. She asked me to pray with her every night. Every night. She used an illustration that crystallized her feelings very well. As we remember it, she said something like this. Imagine you are diagnosed with such a lethal condition that the doctors told you that you would die within hours unless you took a particular medicine, a pill, every night before going to sleep. Imagine that you were told that you could never miss it or you would die. Would you forget? Would you not get around to it some nights? No, it would be so crucial that you wouldn't forget, you would never miss. Well, if we don't pray together to God, we're not going to make it because of all we are facing. I'm certainly not. We have to pray. We can't let it just slip our minds. End quote. That was Kathy Keller. So then Tim Keller says, maybe it was the power of the illustration, maybe it was just the right moment, maybe it was the Spirit of God, or most likely of all, it was the Spirit of God using the moment and the clarity of the metaphor. For both of us, the penny dropped. We realized the seriousness of the issue, and we admitted that anything that was truly a non-negotiable necessity was something we could do. That was more than 12 years ago, and Kathy and I cannot remember missing a single evening of prayer together, at least by phone, even when we've been apart in different hemispheres. Kathy's jolting challenge, along with my own growing conviction that I just didn't get prayer, led me into a search. I wanted a far better personal prayer life. I began to read widely and experiment in prayer. As I looked around, I quickly came to see that I was not alone. I love that. I was not alone. There was a long time in his life where prayer just was not that important to Tim Keller. And as he began to search and write the book and think and experiment, he realized I'm not the only one. And I resonate with that. Sometimes prayer isn't that important to me. Sometimes I forget about it. Sometimes I'm not experiencing the power of it. And I wonder if that's true for you. And one of the ways to reconnect and to rekindle that truth, that power, is by remembering, when was the first time I saw that prayer was real, that prayer is powerful, that prayer is important. I love just for you to think about that. I might ask that question tonight in our prayer meeting. We have a prayer gathering every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on Zoom, and some people meet at the church as well in person, and we just pray for about 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And it is a marvelous time. Every time I'm able to join, it's one of the highlights of my week, and it's a reminder to me that prayer is powerful. So I want to invite you, come and join us tonight if you're not doing anything. At about 7 o'clock we begin, and just go on our newsletter. There's a little link. You can click onto it and join us, or come to the church and join us in person. We'd love to pray together and be reminded together that prayer is powerful.